Hi, this is Kirby Summers for the Epstein Project podcast. Today, I want to delve a little deeper into the case, Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit against Prince Andrew. You know, Prince Andrew has consistently denied that he had sexual intercourse with Virginia Giuffre. However, there is a pattern. There's a pattern that we have seen among the men who were friends, associates, or who were simply being blackmailed in Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's trafficking operation. Men like Leon Black, Jean-Luc Brunel, and I would venture to say even Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently in jail. And that pattern has been established. The pattern is someone will step forward. In this case, it's Virginia Giuffre, and the victim will say, I was forced to be intimate with, in this case, Prince Andrew. And then that person, Prince Andrew, will turn around and say, oh no, I never even met her. Well, okay, so from the very first court appearance, which happened on September the 13th, uh, although Prince Andrew had avoided being served, and at this point he was served on Monday because he is using an attorney in California, and so service has been accomplished. He cannot argue service. But what's interesting is that he remains defiant, right? He remains defiant even though it is clear to everyone that in the court of public opinion, he has lost. It was clear to everyone except Prince Andrew when he had that car crash interview on the BBC. And frankly, I don't know who is advising him, but whoever is advising him is doing a very poor job. Prince Andrew is now pretty much steering another car crash with this lawsuit. The lawsuit, even though we are at the very beginning, it's already a car crash. He could have settled this for 5 years prior to this point. Virginia Giuffre, her attorneys have attempted for 5 whole years to get Prince Andrew to settle this so that it would not become another publicly known. This is the first time in history that a member of the royal family has been sued in a civil court by a woman claiming, for rape. This has not happened. And in this case, it's really, frankly, even more serious because Virginia was 17 in the state of New York, which made her a minor in the state of New York, and which is the basis for this particular lawsuit when she claims that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made her have sex with Prince Andrew. I want to just take a minute and read an excerpt of his BBC interview. Because if he is going to use Jeffrey Epstein's 2009 settlement with Virginia Giuffre, I'm just curious, as probably all of you are, is he going to claim that he was a friend of Jeffrey Epstein? Is he going to claim he was a business associate of Jeffrey Epstein? Or was he an employee of Jeffrey Epstein? So I'm going to read this to you. Um, so in November of 2019, he sat down and he had a very long interview, and all of us have, we all kind of feel like he lied his way throughout the whole thing. But I'm going to read this. This is a verbatim. Uh, so let's see, where am I going to start? You know what? I'm gonna make it short. Do you regret? So Emily Maitlis basically looked him in the eye and wanted to know the following. She said, "Do you regret the whole friendship with Epstein?" Prince Andrew's response, "Now, still not. And the reason being is that the people that I met and the opportunities that I was given to learn, either by him or because of him, were actually very useful. He himself not, as it were, as close as you might think. We weren't that close. So therefore, I mean, yes, I would go and stay in his house, but that was because of his girlfriend, not because of him." All right, well that statement is itself contradictory. That he's not as close, but he goes and he stays at his house. And we heard also during that interview with Emily Maitlis that he referred to Epstein as Ghislaine Maxwell's plus one. And so if he's going to use Jeffrey Epstein's settlement of 2009 with Virginia Giuffre, which basically has a clause stating, if you settle with me, you cannot sue any of my friends or my business associates or my employees. So under what category is Prince Andrew going to list himself? Was he Jeffrey Epstein's friend? I mean, he's pretty much basically said that he Epstein was a plus one. He's pretty much basically saying, "Oh, we weren't as close. So if you weren't as close, then you're not his friend." Well, if you were a business associate, that would be an interesting thing because any judge would then want to know, and the attorney that would be involved in the case, if this were to continue and become an actual trial, they would want to know, well, what was the basis of your business association with Jeffrey Epstein? Now, that can get very dicey because at that moment in time, we know that Jeffrey Epstein, everything he did was illegal. It's been alleged that he was a money launderer. It's certainly pretty clear now that he was the head of a large human sex trafficking organization that spanned the world, frankly. So what kind of business would Prince Andrew have had? And to go back to his words, you know, the things that he learned from him and the opportunities that he was given. So if he opts to use that lawsuit and that clause to get himself out of this lawsuit, um, he very well could end up being in legal problems, facing legal challenges, because then he would be he would have to show with documents what the source of those business connections were. It's not like the court is going to take his word for it. During the case of Virginia Giuffre versus Ghislaine Maxwell, that's where all of those documents originated. We have a treasure trove of documents based on that lawsuit. So it seems to me, watching Prince Andrew's response and denials and just, even doing the Emily Maitlis interview and having an attorney show up on Monday, the 13th of September, at the last minute, it seems to me that he is not living in the same world as we inhabit. He lives on a cloud. He is literally, the man is completely detached from reality. He completely believes that nothing will happen to him. So I want to go back and address and remind you all that this is a civil matter. It is not a criminal matter. It is a civil lawsuit. However, there are areas that if he continues, and in my opinion, he should have just settled this when David Boies, during the previous 5 years, attempted to reach out to him for 5 whole years. The only reason that Virginia sued at this moment in time is because the statute of limitations for her, having been a minor victim, had come to an end. So it was either do it now or never do it. And so she did it. And I think, again, bravo to Virginia for having done that. Um, so again, I want to go back to the issue of sovereign immunity. He doesn't have it, and his mother, as the Queen of England, actually would have that. But I want to just give you some information about sovereign immunity. Um, there is such a thing as sovereign immunity. However, it is kind of it's a privilege and it's not absolute, meaning that the law and police officers and the agencies that we have in the United States to protect the public uh, do not give someone just like a free ride, um, no matter what. You cannot just simply come into the United States and commit a crime. Uh, so that even if, let's say, even if he had sovereign immunity, which he does not, it is not intended to serve as a license for persons to go against the law and intentionally avoid liability for their actions. The purpose of these privileges and immunities is not to benefit individuals, but to ensure the efficient and effective performance of their official missions on behalf of their government. Okay, so that even if he had it, which he does not, it still would be a matter that would be up to the courts to decide. You broke our law. Rape is rape. Having sex with a trafficked individual is rape. So that is a crime. So that even if he had the sovereign immunity, which he does not, he still could not sort of walk away from this using that as an excuse. So I just want to make sure. And also, I have a couple of notes here. I just want to make sure that I address a couple of the things that have been brought up. All right, somebody and I've seen this on Twitter and I've seen this as comments to some of my videos and my podcast interviews, and people will say, well, gee, Virginia settles her cases. Everyone settles their civil cases. That is what a civil lawsuit is. The courts in the United States and throughout the world, in civil lawsuits, the way that it is determined who wins is through a financial settlement. And 95% of cases that are brought before a court are settled before they even begin. Before they begin. In some cases, and for as a good example, again, I'm going to use the case of Virginia Giuffre versus Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell and Virginia, that lawsuit began in 2015. It did not end until 2017 when Ghislaine Maxwell decided enough was enough. She couldn't just keep providing the court with more documents. She just wanted it to end, and she settled. But again, it cost her not only a pretty penny to defend herself in court, and I guess if you have dirty money, allegedly, from a trafficking ring, allegedly, then she has bottomless dollars. And if you're working for another government, allegedly, uh, in a covert trafficking ring, allegedly, I guess you have endless amounts of money that you can tap into for your legal fund. when you're caught, as she was, in this civil lawsuit. But my point is that she, after 2 years that this was in the court system already, she settled it, and she had to sell her very expensive $15 million townhouse in New York City in order to settle the case with Virginia Giuffre. Okay, so that is the way the court system is set up, and for anyone to find fault with Virginia for settling, it's ignorance on the part of the people who think this way. Please do a little basic research on the law, on civil lawsuits and the law, because that is the only way a civil lawsuit is settled. And if the two parties do not agree and it continues and it's finally before a jury and a judge, the jury and the judge will decide how much money will be paid to the person who wins, because ultimately one of the two parties will win. Okay, typically what happens is one person sues and then the other person sues that person, and then it's heard. The minor 5% of those cases are then heard by a judge and a jury, and then the judge and the jury decide which of the two people is more credible, who has produced enough documents to substantiate the truth, and then a financial settlement is awarded. And the best example of that is the lawsuit, the civil lawsuit of Ron Goldman's parents against O.J. Simpson. That was a civil lawsuit. It was decided on behalf of Ron Goldman's parents and family, and O.J. Simpson had to, as demanded by the court, pay a substantial settlement to the Goldmans. Okay, so that's a really good case to kind of keep in mind. Um, you know what? We're all kind of really proud of Virginia Giuffre and of all the victims who have stepped forward, because no one to date has taken on a member of the royal family, and she has done this. She has done this and more. So it is, quite frankly, it is, if Prince Andrew is going to remain stubborn, defiant, blind, arrogant, and I can go on with a list of words that describe, he's such a, he is the, if there was like a definition of a blonde bimbo, to use a very dated term, he is the equivalent of a blonde bimbo. I cannot imagine anyone uh, more blind to reality than Andrew. I have zero respect for the man. But in any event, if he decides that he wants to fight this beyond this point, and just the thought of it is just ridiculous. But if he decides to fight this beyond this point, then the onus is on David Boies, the attorney who is representing Virginia Giuffre. Okay? The onus is on David Boies. So, as we all know, Boies was connected to the Harvey Weinstein situation. It was David Boies who introduced Black Cube, the spy organization that has former Mossad agents go out, and Harvey Weinstein was introduced to Black Cube through David Boies. And currently, there is a lawsuit against Boies by Rose McGowan, and she has sued both David Boies in addition to Black Cube for the pain and suffering that she had to endure. So David Boies has made statements publicly declaring that, he has taken on Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit on a pro bono basis, meaning that he is not charging her because he wants to, he's in his 80s, that he wants to sort of balance certain things. Well, at this moment in time, I'm going to say about David Boys, and if he's listening to David Boys, that's a lovely sentiment. But at this moment in time, the result and the action is the only thing we're going to remember you by. If you have to win this for Virginia, so you have to do your best to make sure that if Prince Andrew continues with this lawsuit, that you win this on behalf of Virginia Giuffre, because that's what we're going to remember you for. You cannot lose this, because otherwise your words mean nothing. So I maybe I'm sounding a little bit harsh, and I'm sorry if that's what is coming across. But bottom line, it's attorneys who think outside the box and who fight 1,000% on behalf of their clients, who win or lose a case. So if Prince Andrew continues, then it's up to David Boys. But to summarize and to just kind of end on an up note, Virginia has shown herself to be a remarkable woman. She has not flinched. It is unimaginable to think of the stress that is on her. Um, and she has taken on Jeffrey Epstein. She has taken on Ghislaine Maxwell. She has taken on Jean-Luc Brunel. She has taken on Prince Andrew. She has taken on almost everyone who has harmed her at a time that she was a very defenseless young girl, with no power whatsoever. And so, in the end, as much as we are all incredibly proud of Virginia, the only person that Virginia has to answer to is herself. Okay? She's the only one. She's going to always be able to look in the mirror and know that she did her best. And so she doesn't owe us anything, although she's doing remarkable things for every woman who has ever been raped, for every child who has ever been raped, male or female. She is doing incredible things, and we all admire her. But in the end, she doesn't owe us anything. She owes herself, and she has accomplished. No matter the outcome, she has accomplished incredible things. And I'm just very proud to be alive to witness such a remarkable woman taking on the most powerful people on the planet. So, with that, I am going to say, have a good day, like the video, subscribe. Again, this is Kirby Summers for the Epstein Project podcast. Until the next time, bye.